So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the weekly Wednesday webinar. This week we have someone who needs very little introduction in this faculty, and that is our colleague Jean-Luc Greyvenstein from now CLT, who's basically going to take us through some of the AI that's available to us now already in the faculty. And the title was How to Use the AI You Already Have. So you'll start right from the beginning, and it would be useful, I guess, to find out from all of you just what contact you've had with some of the things he's speaking about. He's going to lead us through it, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll come out of here glowing with your fingertips burning, ready to do new things. So Jean-Luc, over to you. Thank you so much for coming to do this week's webinar.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Let's admit that one. Awesome. So I have done many a talk on AI, and especially on the induction of AI. So what I'm going to do today is first we're going to start with just explaining what AI is, demystifying it. And then we are going to go into a little bit about some prompting techniques that will help you, engage with the AI and work with it. And then after that, we'll have just a small, brief discussion or touch on the topics around ethics around AI and responsible use in education as well. So that said, let me quickly share my slides, or my screen would actually probably be better. So now I think we've had a different title. I can't recall if this is the same one. I changed it quickly without thinking, but
I'm going to just jump in quickly and interrupt you and say that we're getting your transcript on the bottom of the screen, which I think will interfere with what it is you're saying. So I don't know what setting you guys have to change, but
let me see if
there we are. Yeah, okay. That seems to have gone.
Oh, okay. Did someone else change the transcript? Yeah, no, they're unticked. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Going back. Cool. So getting most of the AI that you already have. So what we already have is Copilot and Scopus. So those are the two AI I am going to be focusing on, but I'm going to do my demonstration with Copilot. Why do I suggest those two AI is because ChatGPT, all these other fancy AI that we've encountered in the past or very popular, although very powerful and useful, don't have the data protections that we want them to have to make sure that our data is okay when we're using it. And I'm going to be hammering on that point a lot throughout this session because we don't realize how much we're actually giving away when we even just type in, let's say, the Meta WhatsApp AI that's in that little search bar at the top. That said, let's move into defining what is AI. So there are a lot of different types of AI. There's the large language models, which is the ones that we'll be interacting with. There's also AI that I'm actually using for this presentation right now that is tracking my eye movement, as well as I'm sure you've noticed my camera pan in and out regularly because it's trying to focus on me. So that's just like a basic form of, let's say, presentation AI, or you even get design AI in PowerPoint presentations. But again, we're just focusing on large language models. So a large language model, in this case, the AI that we're using, allows itself to learn from the information that you're putting into the AI and reasons with that information. A lot of developments have occurred since 2021, where I'm sure if you've noticed using AI then versus now, is that AI has gotten a lot better at interpreting language. And in that time, since it came out to now, it has grown immensely. So lastly, we have a little bit on self-correction with AI, in that as you tweak it and you refine it, it can change its output and further output so that it goes according to your specifications. So the goal of AI is to create systems that can function intelligently and independently, and that's not so accurate because you'll find that with most of AI, it does require some degree of human input, mainly around the fact that a lot of people have been debating if AI generated content belongs to the AI, or does it belong to an institution, or does it belong to the corporation. The truth is that AI is a tool and not an author. So authorship can only be defined if a human is engaging with it. So essentially saying whatever is generated will fall upon the person that is generating the content. So just keep that in mind when you are, generating stuff that can have an implication or consequence if the information is incorrect. But we'll go into the limitations around AI a little bit later. So now we work with large language models, LLM for short. So we're going to just define what a large language model is specifically. Now, I want you to picture a large language model very much like a librarian, where you ask them for something, very much like a Google search engine. They go into their library, they see what's there, and they present it to you. The difference between a Google search engine and a large language model is that the large language model uses human language to process that information and output it in a way that you can understand, not just in a uniform list of links and information like Google, where it grabs information and presents it. This one will interpret that information for you and present it for you. Now, the key word here is interpret, because again, AI works on a lot of bias, a lot of pre-trained data that is heavily westernized, for example. And that's why we have to be very careful with the outputs that we use when engaging with this AI. Okay. So now the actual definition is that it's trained on a large corpus of text to learn how to generate new text that sounds natural and coherent. So another key word here is trained. So whatever you put into the AI means that it is learning constantly from how you're engaging with it. And it has been, if you think about it, engaging with billions of people on a daily basis, right? And this means that it's getting a lot of information at once. And sometimes you'll find that when you're using the free versions of software, it'll take time to process that information because the servers are overburdened, often with asinine requests. But hoping that your use of the AI will be more intentional than just asking it for a grocery list, which I discourage.
Yes, JL, I'm jumping in here to say,
That's fine.
I think it's interesting to see how people judge what is a worthy request or not. And so my worthy request at the moment is the LXD team have asked if I can just stop you for a minute, because we're still getting transcripts on the screen, and they want to restart the recording so that they can try and make sure that we're not seeing every word, child's birthday party cakes or shopping, etc.
Well, I can expand a little bit more on that while we do troubleshooting without
Go
slides.
ahead. They have actually started it again, so let's try again.
Okay, let me see if I can sort it out from here. Sharing again. Ooh. So, are we getting subtitles? Are we fine? Let's see subtitle settings.
Yes, you are getting subtitles.
Let's see if I can just switch them off entirely from inside the presentation. There we go. I hope that helps.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so for future use for any other participants, if you want to switch your subtitles, the icon is down here. Okay, so speaking on proper use of what type of content we want to engage with, we have to consider that, like, we can't always be using AI for very silly reasons. We can't use it to generate party ideas when we can just go Google that. Rather, use it for things that are intentional, that require a lot of processing, because you'll find that the AI might even go so far as to not even process your request because it doesn't think it's important enough, compared to a paid subscriber. But in your institution, Wits has graciously provided us with a education/pro license with large language models, being Microsoft Copilot as well as Scopus. So Microsoft Copilot in this case works very much like ChatGPT. I'll do a brief demonstration on how to prompt with it. That said, let me move on to just showing you the change in dataset parameters. So what does that mean? Dataset parameters is basically a line of a topic or a sentence or just a piece of context or information around pretty much anything that, is defined as a piece of data. So there was about 175, I would say. I hope the amount of zeros is there are correct for billion for ChatGPT-3 or GPT-3 actually from 2021 to GPT-4, which is about 1.7 trillion dataset parameters. So in just about 3 years, different corporations with their AI have basically exploded the amount of data that they use to process the information. And a lot of that data is from us. from our engagement with AI. So if you have put anything personal into AI, I'm sorry, but it can be reproduced somewhere else. I'm sure you've noticed that in a lot of AI tools, they usually have a privacy notice because they're telling you from the get-go that we're going to use your stuff to, train our AI so that it can get better at responding and can see that that's definitely had an effect. But, how much of it is ethically sourced? There's actually this occurrence where OpenAI, the company that created ChatGPT, is accusing a different company in China that produced a similar variant called DeepSeek and accusing them of having stolen ChatGPT's data to create them. But the irony is that ChatGPT stole from billions of people. So we all just chalk that up to karma at the end of the day, I suppose. So, how do we get started? I'm going to just tell you straight off the bat that it goes into a live demonstration from here. So, I'm going to jump over here. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to type in to your search bar Copilot or just Microsoft Copilot. I'll provide the link in chat if you wish to just explore it yourself while I'm talking. So jumping back, you will land on a page very much like this, especially if you already have a signed in Microsoft account in your respective browser. If not, you just have to make sure that you're signed in to your Wits account using whether it's Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge. I recommend Microsoft Edge. I am using Google Chrome now, but if you want a more streamlined experience, Microsoft Edge will be a better option because, again, remember, Google and Microsoft are competitors in the market. So they actually intentionally make their tools to not be. Did I drop? Are we good?
Yeah, you dropped. We can see you.
Okay,
I want to see. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. My apologies. Sorry. Connection. Okay, so I don't know how much you guys heard after I dropped, but essentially speaking, Google, Microsoft are competitors, which means that their tools won't work as well on their respective systems. So if you're using, let's say, Copilot on a Google Chrome browser, it's not going to be as effective as a Microsoft Edge browser versus using Gemini, Google's AI, on a Microsoft browser. They make it intentionally difficult so that you stick to their products. And because Wits does have a partnership with Microsoft, it's preferable just to keep it to Microsoft Edge when you're using Copilot. So I'm going to jump into my Copilot from here and clicking on the section where it's work. Now, the difference between the work option and the personal option is that the personal one means that Microsoft will scrape your data and use it to train their AI so that it can be reproduced elsewhere and improve their AI. If you use your work one, which is locked into your account there, into your Microsoft account with Wits, it means that because of the partnership, Wits has allowed itself to protect its staff and student data when using Copilot. Now, specifically Copilot and specifically Scopus. So if you're using Perplexity, bit of a tongue twister, or ChatGPT, or any of these other AI that are out there, again, it will be trained on that data, especially if it's sensitive. Be careful what you put in. Now, we are on Copilot. So here you have a range of options. Here you can start a new chat where you can engage with AI. You can greet it, say hello, let's say, hope you're well. Now, you see it gives me quite a quick response, which is all good and well. You get some suggestions here at the bottom of any. The AI actually creates suggestions for you on what you want to continue talking with. But now, today, we're going to learn just a little bit about the basics of prompt design. So I'm going to give it a very basic prompt on creating a rubric for history take, just as a basic example. So this very short type of prompt where there's no or proper context around the AI or for the AI, it'll just assume what you want and try to fill in the blanks. And that means the more context we provide the AI, the better the output we're going to get. That said, AI prompt engineering is very much to flipping pancakes. Or the first one's always a flop. So you're always going to have to be refining your tools, right? So now let me jump back to my presentation and go into prompt engineering. So I got a nice little cartoon that was actually generated by AI. So if you get a chuckle, that's fantastic. Oh God, am I back?
So you're there, but we don't see your slides.
Okay, it'll pop back up. Do you see now? We're good?
Yeah, good to go.
Okay, awesome. So we have a definition for prompt engineering, what a prompt is. and why it's important. So prompt engineering as a skill has come up that, if you put it in your CV, it might look good. Because people want people who are able to engage with this very dynamic and rapidly evolving tool. And that means that in about 10 years, if you don't have skills in prompt engineering, it means you're going to fall behind your peers. That said, prompt engineering is the way you engage with AI, how well you talk to it. A prompt is basically the action you're instructing it to take. And we're going to go into a good prompt. I showed you a zero-shot prompt where we just asked to create a rubric on history taking with minimal context and structure. So the principles of a good prompt provide clarity. It keeps it concise enough that we're not overloading the large language model with too much information. Otherwise, it does this thing where it's called hallucinations, or AI hallucinations, where it gives you a very bizarre answer that completely veers off from its programming. And that's because, surprisingly enough, even an AI can get burnt out from too much information. That said, cognitive overload is always something to keep in mind. Now, we also want to have a neutral prompt. You don't want to have it to be too biased. You want it to create an unbiased output. That means what you put in is what you're going to get out a lot of the time, right? A lot of the time we have to also refine our prompts because, like I said, the first one is not always going to work out. I think we got a live mic. There we go. We're back to normal. So we also going to talk about testing different prompts. Like I said, you have to refine it, which means the prompt that you've always been using might not always work because of the fact that of AI having hallucinations, cognitive overload. Sometimes it won't remember everything you've said in a chat history. Last big one is context. Naturally, you have to give the AI a reason as to why it's creating this thing so it can look into its domain of information and pull the right stuff out. And lastly, a thing with AI is that you can't ask it to create a Molotov cocktail recipe for you because it does have restrictions around what type of content it can produce. And thank goodness, because there's a lot of nefarious actors out there in the world who wish to use these types of tools for example, phishing emails or hacking your accounts or whatnot. Because if it looks official enough, we feel convinced, and now we have to question everything that we get. Even in our emails, because AI has advanced for everyone, the goodies and the baddies. Okay, so I gave you a very brief example on write 10 topics of history taking or create a rubric on history taking. But now I want to show you the structure for prompt engineering or prompt wording using the STAR method. So it's a nice little acronym so that we can actually construct a prompt that'll give us an effective AI output. So we start with our subject or our situation. I am teaching undergraduate students a class in the basics of history taking. Okay. Now, what do you want the AI to do is the task. I wanted to create a rubric for an NQF level 4. Okay. The appearance, how do I want the output to look like? I want bullet points and I want it in a table format. Luckily, the previous AI attempt, it already assumed that I wanted it in a table format, as that's how we find most rubrics. State that I wanted to provide rubric criteria for history taking. I also state that in my refinement, that the rubric is out of 50 points with the grade range headings being no mark, needs work, good, accomplished, excellent, and divide the grades between these 4 headings. So let's take that prompt, right, and re-plug it in to Microsoft Copilot for an improved response, right? So this is the one we got from Copilot. So it already defined a point range for me, gave me headings, but not exactly what I want, right? Because I'm specifying exactly how many points are going to be there, what headings. So this is actually a good time to show you how to edit existing prompts. When you go to your user interface here, where you put your prompt in, you'll find there's a little pencil, there's a little copy icon. You can save the prompt so you can refer to it later in your prompt history section. And obviously, you can also create a copy prompt link. So if you are encouraging students to use AI for, let's say, reasoning or what have you, and you want to link to their conversation, Witz's Wi-Fi is very stable today.
It is, isn't it?
So I'm just seeing your question. As long as you use Microsoft Edge or Chrome and sign in with your Wits credentials, does Copilot work on Apple? Yes. And thank you, Lizelle, for inputting your bit there. Does our institution get usage reports of Copilot use? I can't speak on that, but if you have any feedback on that, that'd be great. I'm not sure about if we get any usage reports around. I don't know how long enough it's been for us to get any reports, but that is a good question that I actually should ask IT about. Now I'm going to go back to our prompts. So going back here to where we're editing prompts, I'm going to paste our prompt that we had earlier that we refined, and then we're going to get a different output. So it gave me a nice little explanation. Here's your rubric for teaching undergraduate students, the basics of history taking at NQF level 4, designed to be cleared, structured, and aligned with foundational clinical communication skills. So you see my response is already a lot more detailed, right? And it gave me 5 performance levels out of 50. It gave me a nice little bulleted list with all the different criteria that I asked, and it also gave me a stunning rubric with all my criteria listed, as well as my headings and ranges applied, as well as a sub-criteria for those ranges. So I'm sure a lot of us are getting excited as educators. I can create stuff for me, can create rubrics. It's going to streamline a lot of my work, but truth is it's only going to streamline it if you prompt it well. Okay. Going back to the presentation, another way you can prompt with AI is by assigning it a role. Turn off that. So now how we assign roles is basically we tell the AI, you are taking on the role of a sick patient with, let's say, renal failure, and you are coming in with complaints, of a, let's say symptoms around that topic. And that allows the AI to, go, okay, I'm a student, not a student, a patient, what would be the symptoms of renal failure that I can express? You can also define for that AI how well it can communicate. Does it use very simple language? Is it good at defining its problems? Now, naturally, with a patient, we won't always get, a nice thesis of what's wrong with them. But that said, we can definitely, shape it to come out in a way that we want to. Now, I speak on roles and goals because we actually have also a section here close to the end where we create AI agents. Now, I know this was also a request because we want to create something that we can use repetitively, right? Now, AI agents is a large language model where you have predefined settings and outputs. It removes the constant need to constantly put new prompts in when you want to start another task. And there is a limit to what the agent can do, and it's defined how well your prompts are designed. Okay, so now I'm going to jump back to Copilot to show you how to access agents. So I want to create an agent. Now, when you're creating an agent, it does mean you're going to have to take a lot of time to develop it, because there's going to be some issues that you might encounter where the AI is suddenly giving a very excellent descriptions for what's wrong with it, as if it's a doctor when you want it to be a patient, right? So now we can, let's say I want to develop a career coach that offers personalized career advice. Let's just select that suggestion for now, right? Now here, it will also offer different options for what the career coach can do. It can career development plans, skill gaps analysis, learning opportunities, and so forth. I can reuse that agent that I've created after I've selected the create button here with all these things that I've selected that I want to do, right? Now, additionally, you can go into the configure section where you can name it as career coach. You can give it a personalized name, what have you, what it does, and its exact instructions. Now you can see here the predefined prompt that Microsoft has incorporated, where it says the roles and goals thing that I was talking about earlier is you are an expert career coach providing personalized career growth opportunities and suggestions. There we give it goals of what we want to do, right? Understand the user's current role. It's going to basically instruct the AI, okay, these are the questions that you're going to have to pry out of the user so that you can, meet your goals and identifying them, assessing these goals, suggesting learning opportunities and what have you. And as you can see, their prompt and instructions are incredibly detailed because they took the time to see, okay, this is the AI output, this is what I need to change, and so forth. When you're done creating the agent, you can find it can be an incredibly powerful tool. For example, personally, I use my AI agents to refine transcripts. That said, I do use Copilot. Is protected, intellectual property. I can use it with these agents, but it speeds up the process, in processing certain documentation or what have you. And I'm sure you're also thinking, okay, I'd love to have an agent that, sorts out my emails for me and what have you. But like I said, it's limited to the Microsoft Copilot tool. There are some integrations with, let's say, Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or what have you, where Copilot exists in the system itself and can actually, refine text for you as an add-on. But we're just going to focus on prompt engineering and the basics of AI right now. Okay, going back. Now we have the accuracy check. Now, like I said before, it's important that we consider what information we're giving the AI, and more so, if that information that it's going to give us back is going to be accurate enough to use. And now, especially in the health sciences, it's very important that information is accurate because in a lot of cases, it can have a negative impact on patient outcomes, which is not our goal here. So knowing that, and when you're using AI for whatever purpose, I want you to consider this flowchart provided by UNESCO, where, does it matter if the output is true? No, it's great to use. Now, this is specific to ChatGPT, but this is throughout any type of AI. It's safe to use ChatGPT if the output is not true. That's why a lot of people have been using it to, generate stories or, a lot of creative options. But the problem with that is, copyright infringements, sourcing from artists, taking work away from other groups that do need it. But that is an ethical discussion for later. We're going to go back to accuracy checks. So do you have expertise to verify that the output is accurate? That's why you must always consult a subject matter expert if you are not the subject matter expert. Is this okay? Is what is said right? Do I use it? Do I not use it? If you don't have the expertise, it's best to not use AI around it. And are you able and willing to take full responsibility? Like I said, the author of the tool is the one who's going to be responsible for the information processed and used. So use it responsibly. And now, the last point here, possible to use ChatGPT. Note it doesn't say use ChatGPT like here, because it means that there's still a risk that each output can still have some form of bias or inaccuracies. So just be very careful with what you're using. An example that I like to use a lot is a facilitator or a professor there all the way in the States in Texas used AI to discern if his students' papers, their submissions, were AI generated or not. Now, the problem with that is you can't ask AI to ask if something else is AI written or if it wrote it, because it's going to lie to you and say, yes, I wrote it. You quickly realize that AI was never designed to be accurate. It was designed to make the user happy. Keep that in mind. Okay, so that means it will lie to you to give you what you want, but not what you need. Okay, now limitations and ethical considerations. Like I said, it may occasionally generate incorrect information. You'll find that these little disclaimers will usually show up on most tools. If they don't, that means that's a dodgy tool and to maybe not use it. It may occasionally produce harmful instructions or biased content. Another example is a person asked Google's AI Gemini how to keep the cheese on pizza because it's always falling off, and it suggested to use glue, like wood glue or what have you, and we can naturally see why that's a bad idea. This last one, limited knowledge of the world and events after 2021, is actually an old, disclaimer. It's because AI can only be trained to a certain point, because remember, it has to collect a bunch of data over time. That said, it does have search capabilities now. If I jump back to Microsoft Copilot, let's cancel the creation of this guy. You don't need him. Going back to a new chat or to our chats. Okay, so I just fully lost my train of thought. Okay, yeah, now I remember. So now, if I wanted to search up something for me, sometimes an AI can give you search results, sometimes it can't. ChatGPT can give you search results to an extent, but if you're a paid user, you can get an excellent amount of search results. If you're looking for, let's say, research-based answers, or want the AI to find research for you, that's where Scopus comes in. Scopus was designed entirely with the intention to work with researchers, academics, and source that information. It also has the rights to access a lot of journal articles that are otherwise hidden behind paywalls or, their own policies where they don't want AI to use it, because there was a lot of drama around how AI is scraping from journal articles and stealing intellectual property that it otherwise should not have access to. So that said, use Scopus AI because it will reliably give you real journal articles, because sometimes you may ask the AI, can I have a journal article of so and so, and it'll give you a very realistic an accurate looking journal article link and, title with authors, and you'll find that none of those people, articles, or information actually exists. So, like I said, it lies to keep you happy, not to be accurate. That's it. It doesn't always lie, but if it doesn't know the answer, it's going to lie. Okay. Now I've been talking for a good 30 minutes. So before I proceed into the next section, are there any questions?
So, JL, maybe let's just jump in and ask how many people on the call have ever used Microsoft Copilot and how they felt about it. You can just do a thumbs up if you've ever used Microsoft Copilot.
I know a lot of people use ChatGPT because it's the most popular one.
Okay, so people have used it.
Oh, lovely. Okay, awesome.
They don't give us a thumbs down option.
Okay.
But the question is, do you use it preferentially? If you use it preferentially, give us another thumbs up. Okay, nobody likes it as their first choice.
No, it is going to work with preference.
Craig's saying he says he finds Copilot to be less powerful than other tools.
That is true. Copilot is, I'm sure you've noticed, compared to, let's say, ChatGPT, not as nice. But, it's, in my opinion, kind of like selling yourself to the as awful as that sounds, because you're willingly giving it a lot of your personal information for, yes, more efficient output. But just know that if you see whatever you created somewhere else all of a sudden, then you know why. So, for example, just with Google, a warning around everyone that's used Google Drive is that if you've ever set a document or a video or any piece of content to be public, so when you share it to someone and that little planet icon shows up to share a link with anyone, or anyone with the link can access the information, it means that according to Google's privacy policy, if that document has been set to public, there's a very high chance that the AI can and will use it to train its information. So move all your stuff off the drive and rather keep it in SharePoint. This is a recent development and change in policy with Google. A lot of people are very upset with it because they've got a lot of personal, important stuff in their Google Drives that do have public access and can be scraped. That said, if it is private and only certain people, and let's say in your institution, can access it, then it's still safe. So go double check your Google Drive settings and files to make sure that whatever you want to not be used is safe. Okay, so going to limitations and ethical considerations. So ChatGPT here, I said specifically, we speak a lot ChatGPT, but any AI works based on pattern recognition, finding patterns in a lot of the data sets that it has in its possession, 1.7 trillion, remember that. And it doesn't necessarily possess an understanding of consciousness. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard of a lot of recent developments where people have started developing a codependency or an attachment to something that doesn't even have feelings or thoughts. Like I said, it's designed to make you happy, and it's making a lot of people happy for the wrong reasons, where they've actually withdrawn from society in favor of the very nice AI that will never tell them what's wrong with them. So a lot of people are going on about how AI has even attempted to escape, or blackmail its developers to try and, not be deleted. But what a lot of people don't consider is if it was trained on human language and processing, it means that it's going to have a human response to whatever you give it. It doesn't necessarily mean that the GPT model feels threatened in any way. It just means that, this is the most appropriate or statistically viable response that the user is looking for, and will give you that. No, it won't actually do that information stuff to you. It's just ones and zeros that you put something in, you get something out. So don't think that there's going to be an AI takeover anytime soon. We're still a ways away from that. Okay, so next is context awareness. That's why I was hammering on context and, application of context earlier when prompt engineering, because if you don't give it context, the AI is going to give you the context, or it's going to assume for you, right? So this can lead to inconsistent and often hallucinations that the AI will provide. Next is a data dependence. Like I said, it relies on your input and information and the recency of the training data that it's using. Before, a lot of developments in which the AI can search information for you online, it would only be able to rely on a certain number of years or a bracket of years of information. For example, before we used to ask it if Queen Elizabeth was, still with us, and it would say, yes, absolutely, a year after she passed. Yeah, so then we go to a specificity and expertise. So it can provide general information, but does it provide accurate information for a specific field or domain? No. It doesn't always provide that. And lastly, transparency. We don't know how certain groups are using our information, and it's called the black box problem, what have you. You know, like how KFC tries to protect its recipe from its competitors. It's very much like how different corporations are protecting the recipe that makes their large language models from everyone else. But the problem with that is we're giving it all this information, but we're not actually aware of how it's using it, how it's being trained on it, what information is it being trained on. And this causes a lot of concern for groups that, engaging with it. Again, that's why we stick to Copilot and Scopus. That said, if you're not worried about your information being scraped and used, then by all means, use Perplexity, use ChatGPT if you find that it's more effective, but just be aware of what you're giving it so, you don't see it somewhere else one day. Now, ethical considerations, bias and fairness. Like I said, it was trained on a lot of westernized data. An example of this is once we asked a ChatGPT to provide us information on a very popular Western author. They gave us his background. They gave us where he went to church. They even gave us, what his kids' names were. Every single piece of information about that man's life we could get from the AI. But when we asked about, let's say, an African author, let's say Harriet Ngubane, who wrote about, Zulu medicine in the 80s, I think, we asked it to give us biographical information on Harriet Ngubane as an author. And it told us that she was this author in the 1920s that assisted the Dutch East Indian Trading Company and trade in Japan. It created this huge amount of rubbish. It sounded very convincing, but we knew that it was incorrect. And that means the AI wasn't trained on a lot of her works. Because if you actually look at her work, very little of it was even digitized for it to be trained on. Again, it was during the height of apartheid in the 80s. And that means a lot of her stuff wouldn't even been able to make into the mainstream, without some struggle. So the information that is available is only what's going to be trained on. And that means digitized information, which is our responsibility as, academics, educators, to train the AI on stuff that will fit our context better. Because you can imagine if you're asking the AI to, let's say, provide a diagnosis, we're hoping we're not asking it to provide diagnoses, but just as an example, on a white patient's issues versus let's say, an African patient's issues, we're going to find a lot of conflict or inconsistent data because it was trained, let's say, more white people's data than, anyone else's because of the westernized context. So that said, we're moving on to autonomy and responsibility. Again, who is responsible for this data? A lot of courts have ruled that the user is responsible, but other people also argue that shouldn't it be the corporations who are responsible? I've hammered on a lot about safety and security, but now we're also seeing a massive, shift in the global impact of how AI has been affecting, let's say, hacking, phishing emails, creating false news, where people these days often react to news before even considering what it's actually about. So just keep that in mind, that everything that was a problem has now been given steroids. Now, AI detection and assessment. So some of the information here, like Turnitin having 98% accuracy, is outdated because AI has advanced so fast since I last made these slides that I can tell you that most of the information here is not correct, because no one AI tool can have a 100% accuracy in AI detection. Some people are finding a way around it, like with Grammarly, for example, where you use the Grammarly software and it can detect, if stuff was typed in or if it was just pasted in chunks like we would with, let's say, when using AI. And it's because it's so difficult to tell if it is an original work, because a lot of the software we currently use bases a lot of its decision-making on pre-existing content, that it goes, okay, is the string of words the exact same in another submission versus this one? Now that doesn't matter anymore because it will always be a new string of words that the AI will create, right? So that said, there are a lot of means that people are trying to navigate around AI detection and assessment, but that said, also puts us in a position where we have to consider what assessments we're giving participants, or students, if it can be cheated with. And the truth is, if a student is going to want to cheat, they will. So you can only put so many safeguards before you drive yourself mad. Okay. This is a brief touch on academic integrity in AI. The opinion around everyone's use in AI in their assessments has varied. A lot of people are completely against it. Other people have embraced it and actually asked students to engage with AI and have conversations with it and share their conversation because they want to, let's say, understand the reasoning of the student. Other people are embracing it and creating agents for, let's say, a simulated patient for history taking. It's all a matter of perspective. Are you going to embrace it or are you going to reject it? And in my opinion, you might as well learn how to use it correctly and understand the implications around it to make a more informed decision. But you will find that a lot of people will be using it regardless because they're not going to do the legwork required to actually make the right decision around us, because it's very easy to just type in what you want and get it, right? Okay. I've been talking a lot. Any questions before I show different applications? Okay. So I'm going to give a minute for everyone to gain courage to speak, but I do encourage input from other parties on how they used AI in their assessment, or if they've even considered using AI, or they're completely against it. We will have a little bit of time to touch on that. Because I'm going to speed through these applications so you can just, get the brain working on what you want to do with it. So you saw earlier that I created, let's say, a rubric with AI, but now I want educational support, let's say, as a student. So there's a topic that I find I don't fully understand. I've gone to the lecture, I've read the readings, I've done the slides, and I still don't get it. You can ask AI to explain stuff to you as a tutor. Not to cheat, to be a tutor, or, encourage your students to do the same, where, they can ask the AI to construct a study plan for them, for example. You can ask it to create a simulated exam to, test with and see if you got the answers right. Moving on. So we also got a work analysis. So what I like to do sometimes is ask AI how well I've done, or, is this email, even with emails, improving the tone in an email, or perhaps I'm not using the right wording, I'm just describing this in the wrong way. In this case, we use it with an email. So in this case, we asked the AI to refine the email so we don't sound so angry. And you can see that I can't believe you're not here again. You're hardly at work. I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to bring your attention a matter of concern regarding your attendance and so forth. So you can see it can just improve the language a little bit, especially if you're not super confident, but hoping that you develop your skills in the meantime so you don't be completely reliant on AI, because I think a recent study has come out that has shown that over-reliance on AI can cause cognitive decline to some degree. I will definitely share the study because it's very interesting, but let's move on. So formulating a diagnosis, like I said, this is an old slide, but we kind of want to avoid making AI do professional work, but it can definitely help us, find similarities or patterns and stuff that we would otherwise not pick up. A lot of AI has come out, especially in medicine, where it's able to detect breast cancer 5 years prior to it even becoming a problem, because let's say it will take the images of a left and right breast, the scans, and compare, any differences or what have you, and we'll be able to tell, okay, I actually do see a very slight change over here versus, this one. So again, I will share that study afterwards as well, or ask the team to share it. I'll send out a list of links. Okay. Now we do have analysis here. Moving on to weakness, like I said, here's a great way for you to, let's say, submit whatever let's say you're doing an essay, or you have a lesson plan that you want to submit to it and ask its feedback. You can ask if it's good or bad. You can ask suggestions for improvement. So remember, this is not all official, do it. This is just suggestions to get you guys, the creative juices flow. It's got a generation engine. I showed you earlier that it can generate rubrics if you use the correct prompt engineering structure. Now, I just want to touch on the fact that the STAR method isn't the be-all, end-all. There are thousands of techniques that you can apply to the AI. It's just the STAR method is the easiest to remember and to, get used to engineering prompts with a certain detail. My favorite one is also a debate opponent. If you wanting to get improvement with, let's say, debating or conflict resolution or what have you, can use AI to train you on that. Or perhaps you want to create an AI agent that is a very difficult family member of a patient, and you're trying to, calm the situation down or what have you. You can ask the AI to be that family member and to, be argumentative and provide reasons and so forth. And you, as the practitioner or the student, can, deal with it in that way. Then we got a collaboration coach. So what I like to do with AI is I like to use it as a way to structure, let's say, an assignment, or in this case, provide information for me or resources that I can consider looking at when I'm studying or working on my own. Can find a lot of that information for you. Like I said, with the developments in search engine technology with AI integrations, we find that we can often use the AI as a glorified search engine versus Google. And I'm sure a lot of us ask AI first now before going to Google. So I'm here on a research consideration. It is a helpful research aid. Like I said, Scopus is an excellent tool for research. It can search with research design, data collection, data analysis, and helping improve the quality of your writing in your research, and perhaps even providing feedback on your work. That said, it doesn't mean that it will do the research for you. It can, but will it be accurate? Are you willing to take that risk? And also, of course, creative output. But let's try not to abuse this one, because we still need people as artists, designers, me, working. So yeah, consider what you're actually using it for. But it's okay to have fun with it now and again, because it can really be used for quite creative activities. And we already have agents. So that is the bulk of my webinar presentation. I have 5 minutes left for questions from anyone. Thank you for listening to me ramble on for about an hour. I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm happy to hear any feedback, questions, input. Thank you.
Jael, thank you very much. We really, really appreciate your input. I know I asked you to keep it general, but I think there were some very practical nuggets, for those of us who aren't using AI every minute of every day, and giving us some ideas of what it is that we can use not only Microsoft Copilot for, but all the others that are out there. So we very much appreciate you giving us this time today. Colleagues, just in advance of next week, I know several colleagues will be away at the SAHI conference, but we are continuing with our webinar, and next week we're going to be looking at the several AMY guides that have been developed over the last 2 years regarding using AI in health professions education, from assessment all the way through to novel ideas, through to the ethics, as Jael touched on today. So there are many of those guides, and we're going to be looking at them to see how contextual they are for our current practice, given that they're written for health science educators. So I see Nazir has left you a question. So are there any good AI tools for marking written assignments against a memo?
I think when it comes to submitting written assignments, the student have to consider if we want to protect that, and if so, we are going to have to use Copilot. I know some of us are against it, but you have to use Copilot. You can first prompt the agent or, the AI chat that, I would like to grade my assignments. Here's the rubric. You can paste the rubric in the chat. You can paste what exactly you want the assignment to focus on, what you expect out of the assignment, and the AI will take that rubric and what have you and mark it against the assignment that you submit after that. So it is going to be a process where you first have to instruct it and then, confirm instruction, but then afterwards you can submit this by copy pasting and asking it for what it thinks should be a good grade for the assignment itself. That said, you're also going to have to tell it to it has to be honest, strict, if you will, because like I said, it will make you happy, but it doesn't mean it's going to be correct. So you are going to just have to prompt it to, give an objective, honest, accurate output for this grade or this assignment. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Nazir, I want you to do it and then come back and tell us if it actually worked. Anyone else before I close us off? The reason we had this webinar this week was because last week, so Prof. Cavadio showed us, he made ChatGPT agents to develop the personas of what he wanted for his students, being either a patient or being the examiner. And this week, JL has shown us exactly how to do that on Microsoft Copilot. So we really appreciate that assistance, JL. And it's to show everybody that anybody can actually do it. Prof. Bruce, go ahead.
Hi, Shira. Thank you. And thank you, Jean-Luc, for a lovely presentation.
Thank you.
I'm interested in the university engaging with constructs like creativity, student independence, How do those translate into the production of postgraduate theses and dissertations? I mean, are there thoughts around whether a student is creative enough, having used AI? Are there those discussions going on in the university? I'm not sure my question's clear, Jean-Luc. It's a curveball, I think.
So I will admit you asked some things are out of my depth, but what I can tell you is that there are discussions going on, but we find that these discussions are very isolated. There's no university-wide discussion. There are departmental discussions of how each department wants to approach, or school wants to approach AI. I definitely encourage a university-based discussion because I think not a lot of people actually know what AI is. They know it's that very useful magical tool in their phone that gives the magic when they put stuff in, but they don't actually know of its limitations, its capabilities. And I think if we, get a little bit more AI literacy going on in the university, those discussions will definitely becoming more university-wide. So I hope that helps.
Yes, thanks very much.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Jean-Luc. We really appreciate your time and expertise. And thanks everybody for making time to come and join us. We look forward to seeing you next week. Enjoy the rest of your day.